We are not starting off with a bang or restarting with a bang. This is not going well. But hello, YouTube. My name is Isabella, and today I'm going to be discussing all the books I read in July. Yeah, you heard that right. In July. I took an unscheduled break. Was not planned to fully not post for the past, 5 weeks, whatever it's been. I knew August was going to be tough. It's the busiest month of my year in terms of a workload. And also I knew the mid-July I was taking over doing a job for my boss. Was I getting paid anymore for it? No, but she goes on a 3-week vacation. Who has to take over? Me. So I knew it was going to be rough. I knew I was going to be tired and burnt out, and I sure was. And then at the end of July, my grandmother passed away, who was very, very sick. And it was sad, very sad, but it was her time, and it just, something had to give. I was really fucking tired, and a lot of emotional turmoil on many ends of the spectrum for many different reasons. So I took a break. I'm excited to be back now, but this is not going well at all. I actually tried filming this literally an hour ago, and just words weren't coming. Not at all. Blanks were being drawn, and filmed for an hour and wasn't even done it yet, which is so annoying. But we're going to discuss the books I read in July quickly, hopefully quickly, because I just don't want to be editing for too long. That has been the one nice thing about my unscheduled break. I just sort of went with it. It's been lovely having free time to just not be editing all the time. Booktube is my main hobby other than reading, and it takes up so much time, especially in the editing portion, because I never shut up and can't string together a sentence half the time when I'm filming. Read 10 books or managed to complete them before everything sort of blew up. And we're going to attempt to discuss them now. The very first book I read in July, which was so long ago, was Malibu Rising by Taylor Jenkins Reid. It's the newest of Taylor Jenkins Reid, set in the 80s, follows 4 siblings and a party that no one will ever forget. Something's going to go very wrong. We know this from the beginning. And yeah, kind of historical fiction, rich people having problems, sort of a story. It was fine. Definitely my least favorite of the Taylor Jenkins Reid books that I have read so far. Content warnings for it include alcoholism, infidelity, drug use, violence, loss of a parent, and grief. The best way I can describe this book is that it felt like 2 entirely separate thoughts that were sort of jammed together and was unsatisfying on both fronts. The second half of the book I thought was a lot weaker than the first, which is the part of the story that we know about going into it, and it just didn't, it was fine. It wasn't offensive, it wasn't bad. The sibling I liked the best, I thought, had the least part of the story. The youngest one, Kit, I liked her and would have liked more from her story. The siblings we focus on the most, I thought, were the least compelling. And the ending was incredibly anticlimactic. I don't know if this is necessarily pitched in the best way or marketed the best, because the way it's marketed, just oh, there's a big event, what's going to happen? You know something's going to go wrong. Consequences of this thing are going to happen. And it just, the way it happens, really, that's all we could come up with. Really shouldn't be setting all our, or placing all our bets on that one event as oh, you're going to want to read it, because it wasn't that exciting. It's pretty boring. I gave it 3 stars. I then went and read What We Don't Talk About When We Talk About Fat by Aubrey Gordon. This is a bite-sized nonfiction story that I listened to via audio, and I learned a lot, gained a lot from it, learned a lot about the fat justice movement, how everything needs to go past just acceptance, and just talking about the work that needs to be done and is being done in other fields and other things that need to be fixed more than just people not liking fat people. Content warnings for it include discussions of fat phobia, discrimination, racism, and sexual assault. I quite it's weird to say enjoyed it because it's nonfiction and it's about a serious topic, but I learned a lot. I think it is an invaluable story for everyone to read, maybe actually specifically thin people. I remember quite a good chunk of it for something that I read literally over a month and a half ago. I'm still learning how to review nonfiction. Please forgive me on that. I then went and completed Skyward by Brandon Sanderson. This is the first in a young adult sci-fi series that I think is set to be 4 books. Follows a young teen girl who is desperate to be a pilot. Humanity in this world has kind of been stranded on this sort of barren planet, and it's just like surviving by the skin of their teeth. There's an alien race like that's set to wipe them out, but Spensa, she is not allowed to because her father was a deserter, which is the absolute worst thing you can be in this world. You follow her fight to try and attempt to get into flight school and become a pilot. I really enjoyed this. The content warnings for this include loss of apparent grief. Words are not flowing. This is a note more for myself rather than anyone else, but I need to figure out something different with the content warnings because I think it eats up some runtime because my videos are always already so long and I always forget to do them at the top of it. So I'm thinking of like flashing them on the screen or something. That's food for thought. Content warnings for this include loss of apparent grief and death. I was a little nervous, a little skeptical because of the way certain people talk about it. Like some people talk about it as like it's the best thing ever. Some people really hate it. I don't know. I was a little skeptical, but I really liked it. Sanderson, I think, did a really, really good job with this. I actually really liked our main character. I think a lot of your enjoyment will hinge on the fact if you like her and if you root for her. She is an unlikable character. She's kind of off kilter, doesn't really know how to like be like human with others because she's had to fight for so much and was hated by a lot of her society for her father's doing. So she kind of is self-important, self-righteous, thinks she's the best, but her character development was really good. Plot was the one thing where I struggled a little bit. I hate to use this term because it's fiction, but there were some things that were unrealistic or plot points or little things that were happening that really took me out of the story because it just felt really like dumb. There were like 2 instances specifically. I was like, come on, Brandon, come on. There's no way that a flight school would allow this to happen. But anyway, I was intrigued to learn more and know more about this world, and there were the classic Sanderson reveals and twists at the end of the book that made me very interested for the next book. Kind of flips everything that we've known on its head, and those are the sort of best twists. I was like shocked at the end of it, so really enjoyed it. I gave it 4 stars, a bright 4.5, 4 stars. Really enjoyed it and very glad that I read it. The next book I don't want to talk about. I've already tried talking about it multiple times in the video that will never see the light of day because I really didn't like it, and it's kind of hard to describe why because the second I finished it I sort of like pushed it out of my brain. And I have been wanting to read these books for a long time. Everyone talks about them as like great YA from like back in the day, like the early 2010s YA, but it's good still. I disagree, and that's The Winter's Curse by Marie Rukowski. This is a YA fantasy story, start of a trilogy, follows a main girl whose father is the general who has conquered this like other land and is currently occupying this other land, and he's desperately trying to convince her to enroll in the army, which she does not want to do. And then the other main character is a slave and native to this country, and the female main character buys him at like sort of an auction block at the very beginning of it. I didn't like this book at all. I think this really has to hinge, like your enjoyment has to hinge on if you like the characters and if you are interested at all in their romance and are pulling for them. And I didn't like them at all, so I didn't care about the story. I thought the story went in such a direction that was so dumb, and what it chose to focus on was so dumb. but it's also because I didn't like these characters, didn't care about their romance at all. So content warnings for this include slavery, death of a parent, suicide like off the page, and suicidal ideation. The plot points that the story chose to focus on, especially in the beginning, was just like the wrong ones to focus on. It felt like a lot of fluff, and then the action was like shoehorned in at the end just to make setup for the next book, which admittedly, if I liked these characters, the setup and the sort of problems that they are facing for them would be real great if you like these characters. But again, I thought they were pretty insufferable. Thought this had potential. I really was looking forward to it for years, and was pretty disappointed. I gave it 1 star. Do not recommend. Okay, so this next book I don't want to talk about because I was really looking forward to it and slightly let down by it. I will be completely honest though, I think I might have to reread it to like fully gather my thoughts on it, because the depression was hitting hard at this point in time of when I read it, and I was really had high hopes because The Winter's Curse sucked, so I was hoping for my next read to be good. So I was a little let down on this one, and I'm sad. Very sad. And that's Witch Shadow by Susan Dennard. I've been talking about this series for so long, and I've been loving it, and I loved Blood Witch, and I was so looking forward to it. And I'm a little let down. I'm not going to tell you what this is about because I talk about this series literally all the time. Content warnings for this include death and violence. The way I have best been able to describe why I was let down with this, without getting into like spoilers, there were a couple tropes and things that are done in here that I don't like as plot points like at all. So the mixture of like the 3 or 4 things that I don't like kind of took me out of the story, especially like a main character who I love. I just wasn't a fan of her plot and the way things went, and I'm a little let down. It's not bad at all. It's still a good story. I just, especially this being the penultimate book, like there's the final book is coming up, and the way that the plot still seems to be in shambles and disarray, and there hasn't been any like solid build up, and like some of the build up I think that happened in previous books was kind of taken out in this one, which is just a thing I cannot stand in books. I can't stand it. And I'm at this point, I'm concerned that the final book will have to do a lot of heavy lifting, like a lot of it to be satisfying. So I'm nervous. And there's an incredible amount of just walking and traveling and running for your lives in this one, which inherently isn't a bad thing. But when it's book 4, and there's been a lot of that already, it's just something I don't love. I gave this 4 stars. Right now, currently thinking about it, might be more of a 3.5, but again, I also think my brain was getting in the way of me reading this, so I think I need to reread it. I then completed If the Shoe Fits by Julie Murphy. This was an arc from NetGalley. It's out now, and it is a loosely inspired Cinderella retelling. It follows our main character who's just finished university and doesn't know what to do with her life. She lost her father a few years ago, and like the grief is really hitting her now, and she is then given the opportunity to go on a Bachelor-like show, and kind of actually hits it off with the lead, but like, you know, complications ensue. Content warnings for this include fat phobia, death of a parent, and grief. I was initially thrown by the fact that our main character is only 22. It feels so young to me, which sounds ridiculous because I'm 24 and like 22 is not that far away. I tend to like my characters in contemporary romance to be older, like that. It just seemed very young, but I liked the way that this was written actually a lot, and the way that the plot was handled. I liked the very loose things that Julie Murphy took from like Cinderella. I really loved the fact that she had a good relationship with her stepfamily. It wasn't the typical hateful nature of the story. Was really, really happy with that. And I also liked the way that this ended. I thought it was very mature. I loved the fat rap. Super happy with how she confronts sometimes when there are problems, but that's like not her whole story. Was really happy with that. Yeah, gave it 3.5 out of 5 stars. Enjoyed it. I then went and listened to The Midnight Library by Matt Haig. I said I wanted to read more sci-fi and sci-fi adjacent stories. I had had this on hold at my library for a while, and so I went with it. And I kind of take issue with the way that this story has been marketed. Not so much the way people talk about it on BookTube, but the marketing has not been great, in my opinion, or there should be some more of a warning label attached to this book. At the very beginning of the story, our main character commits suicide, and instead of, like just dying, she ends up visiting this other place called the Midnight Library, in which she's able to experience her life, where she made different choices, where she's become an Olympic swimmer, where she works in Iceland studying something, and all the different things that she used to think about in her real life that she wished she had done differently. And it was heavily triggering, and to be honest, if I had known that, I don't know if I would have read it then. And I also I think needed a bit more preparation. Content warnings for it include, again, suicide, depression, self-harm, animal death, and yeah, a lot of things related to that. And in the actual execution of this story, I don't know why this is the most so popular. I checked, it has over 500,000 ratings on Goodreads, and it came out last year. This is crazy to me. But I don't know, it has the subtlety of a sledgehammer. Matt Haig really likes to smash you over the head with what he's trying to explain and whatnot. And then yet, I don't think he sticks the landing when it comes to the mental health stuff. It was really odd to me the way this ends and the way people are yeah, okay, this is great. And it's there are big problems that aren't addressed. And I just honestly think that this book should have been shorter. I don't think it should have been 300 pages. I think this premise and this pitch could have been very successful in a novelette, short story, take your pick, because halfway throughout it, just seeing her experience her different lives got really repetitive, and the charm or the excitement of that really, it wore off. And I just thought this was the execution of it was very, very, you can pretty much figure out all the story beats if you just think about it for a little bit. That wasn't exciting. It was fine. I gave it 3 stars. I then completed Valor by John Gwynne and really enjoyed it. Don't know why the shift was so great for me in just terms of enjoyment wise between Malice and Valor. This is the sequel to the Fate and the Fallen series quartet. Malice I have a review for if you want to watch it, but I guess it just felt like a giant prequel. So then when I read Valor, it felt like more the actual plot was starting to build, and a lot of the setup has been done and the groundwork has been done in the first one. So we got into Valor, and it was a fun time. This is very classic fantasy, classic setup, good versus evil. Content warnings for this include death and gore and animal death. This man though, Mr. John Gwynne, loves character perspectives. He loves to add more characters. He does not quit with the characters. And to be honest, I think that is possibly the weakest part of this story. There are some characters I really like. Some of the stuff he does I'm liking, but the characters are not the most standout ever. And I think that's also just because there are so many freaking characters. The plot though, I really enjoyed. I'm enjoying the very gradual and consistent pacing and building of it. The big events and moments also are enjoyable. Everyone talks about the Here Comes the Cavalry stuff. That stuff is really fun and enjoyable just to get into. This also feels a little bit like a setup book. There's also a lot of walking and traveling in this, which is just something I don't love when it's just constant travel. I also like some of the sort of more complicated character dynamics that are developing. There are confused, not morals, but people who don't know where they should land, or maybe learning that the side they picked was maybe sort of wrong, and I'm excited to see that come into fruition. I gave this 4 stars, really enjoyed it. I'm not going to do a full review for this one itself. I think I will do a combined review with this and Ruin when I read Ruin. I also completed Freedom is a Constant Struggle by Angela Davis, another nonfiction, 2 in 1 month for me. Literally never been done. This is another bite-sized nonfiction that is constructed differently. It follows a man interviewing Angela Davis. His name is escaping me at the moment. And as their conversation goes on, they are intersplicing relevant speeches and talks that she had given over the past few years. And Angela Davis is just incredibly smart, like a genius. She is forever relevant, which is also depressing with what she's saying and how the way the world works. But I love what she has to say, her emphasis on like movements and not individuals. She's brilliant. Obviously, there are content warnings for this because it discusses the real world, racism, misogyny, violence, police brutality, genocide, xenophobia, and bigotry. I also really recommend this as a nonfiction. It was good. I'm still struggling on how to review nonfiction. I thought this was very valuable. There's a lot to learn. I then read, like, literally at the end of July because I wanted to turn my brain off for a little bit. I read Sweet Hand by N.G. Peltier. Thought it was fun. Thought it was sexy. I liked that our love interest, he is bisexual. The setting was really what stood out to me. I loved the setting and it being set in Trinidad and the way that was described. Loved. You could really see some of the problems the couple was going to face from literal mile away. And I was hoping that it would be navigated a bit more maturely, and I've seen it navigated better in certain like stories, but the way it blew up just kind of irritated me because you could just see it for so long, and like it would have been solved from communication from the jump, and then it's not communicated from the jump, so I was just annoyed. Their chemistry was really fun though. I liked some of like the plot points and plot beats that were followed were fun. I liked, like, she was a baker and she kind of forces him into helping her at one point, and like them having to work together on a project because of the wedding. Like, that stuff was fun. It was fun. I just didn't absolutely love it like I wanted to. I think I gave it 3.5. Gave it 3.5 or 3 stars. Not entirely sure. So here's hoping that video was not as long as the first one that I filmed, because God, was it taking forever. And here's hoping that I am back. I'm excited to be filming, get back into the swing of things. I have a lot of stuff to figure out. My wheel is still technically broken, so I don't know what I'm doing for my September TBR. Ooh, weird. But anyway, that's a problem for future me to figure out. But as always, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it, and I'll see you again very soon. Bye. I remembered my outro. That was good.